Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Matt and Pat Sports Chat. I am Pat. He's Matt. And this is a sports chat. And we are live, sort of, out here at Shenanigans on the far west side. And I can guarantee you it is far west side because I rode my bike out here today. Yeah. I thought my car was going to be done. I thought I pulled up to the place on my bike, which I do. And I could still see my car on the hoist. I just kept on going.
Yeah. I drove.
Nice. Yeah, it was a nice ride. Nice ride. Beautiful day out. Cloudy. No rain. So it was good.
Better today than yesterday. Yesterday would have been
It was hot.
Yeah.
Well, so how are you before this big weekend?
Good. Ready to take some time off. Got a lot done.
Yep.
And we had that meeting on Tuesday or whatever it was. I mean, you kind of always say it. You have 4th of July, and then it kind of feels like you're already counting down towards football once you get through the 4th of July. So
yeah, we're already deep into football planning because it's just not. I mean, when does camp start again?
This month, or I guess it's still June, but in July, I think July 30th or something.
Well, and we've got big plans for Zim here. He's gonna be a busy guy come football season.
It's the way I like it. It's my favorite time of year.
Yeah, it's awesome. And to start off, just to go back to last season a little bit, and the next pro season, you touched down with Tucker Kraft this week.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like he's doing well.
Yep. I mean, as expected, he's adjusted to the life of a pro football player pretty well. I don't know if you saw before I talked to him, it kind of got out on Twitter that he was going to participate in this beer Olympics thing. And I kind of thought to myself, like, are the Packers okay with that? Like, is that? I mean, he's obviously an adult. He's of age. He's 22, 23 years old. But I just kind of thought that's sort of funny. But David Bakhtiari, who's one of the Packers veterans, their starting left tackle, all-pro, according to Tucker, I didn't manage to work this into the story, but I asked him how it came about. He said one day Bakhtiari said to him during practice, like, "Hey, Kraft, you drink?" And Tucker was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're on my beer Olympics team." And originally he was just an alternate, but then whoever the other guy was backed out or something. So he got to be in this beer Olympics. He was down and he was in Nashville the day I got a hold of him because that's where it was. It was like a sponsor. I think it was sponsored or somehow affiliated with Barstool. And like there were a bunch of. It was him and Bakhtiari against George Kittle of the 49ers, one of the best tight ends in football.
And drinkers, apparently.
Yeah. And there were some celebrities down there. Bert Kreischer, the shirtless comedian that you've seen around.
Yep.
Him
that
and a few other comedians were down there, and some musicians and rappers and whatnot. It sure looked like he had a good time. And yeah, apparently the Packers are all in on that. And I think I talked to him. Yeah, I talked to him the day before he did, or maybe it was the day of. And just kind of asked him how things were going as an NFL dude. He just got done with OTAs, organized team activities, sort of like a pre-camp camp. And you had read a lot throughout those couple weeks out of Green Bay that he was playing well. He was impressing everyone. The media there sure seemed to be impressed with him. So I just wanted to ask him how'd it go. How's it feel to be a pro? And, he's doing well.
Yeah, that's awesome. What is a beer Olympics, by the way? I don't know.
I mean, it was kind of like, have you ever seen the movie Beer Fest?
I think so.
By the Super Troopers guys?
Yeah.
Kind of like that, it looked like. Like one of the events I saw was one where you have the big boot thing looking filled with beer and you got to drink it, and I mean, I'm guessing he probably had a headache the next day, but I didn't get.
I can see where Wisconsin can get behind something like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
we talked about that and wrote about it when he got drafted. Like, this is a pretty good fit for this guy.
Yeah.
And he is clearly already becoming kind of a folk hero or a fan favorite or whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, I'm happy for him. He's a good dude, and he was more than happy to chat at length about how things are going there, and from both a off-field standpoint and a football standpoint. I asked him, just how's Green Bay? And he said, it's Sioux Falls. It's almost exactly like Sioux Falls. And there's a couple little, he said, this town is like the Lennox of Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
This town is like the Brandon and this, but that's good for him. He's a small town boy. I don't think he wanted to be in the heart of New York City or Pittsburgh or something like that. So, it's as a Vikings fan, it's going to be interesting. And, his family grew up Vikings fans. Easy for them to make that transition, obviously, now that their son, brother, whatever, plays for the Packers. But it's going to be kind of funny. I'm already kind of wondering what it's going to be like watching the Vikings play the Packers on Sunday, rooting against him or being tempted to root for him.
I suppose it depends on if he gets in the game. I mean, if he's playing,
well, that's just
then
it.
you're rooting for him.
He's their top tight end from last year moved on, which is why they drafted two of them. You remember, he was the second of two tight ends that they drafted. And it sounds like it's a pretty heated battle, I guess, for the starting tight end job. Now, tight end is, just because you're not the starter, they play two of them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker did say that it just based on how they're using me and Luke Musgrave, the other guy, he said it kind of looks like Luke is maybe more of the deep threat tight end, and I'm a little bit more of the blocking tight end. But Tucker isn't a blocking tight end. So he did say, he's like, if they see me as more of the better blocker of the two, that probably means I'm going to play more, because we all know I can be a receiving tight end too.
Right.
So, those two are getting along. They're not looking at it so much as a competition, as we're in this together. We're both trying to learn this stuff, and we know we're both going to play a lot.
Yeah.
But then, also the other sort of side of that is Aaron Rodgers is gone.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone else is talking about. And he did say, his name comes up all the time. People are always talking about A-Rod's gone, Rodgers gone, and he's like, I'm glad I don't have to talk. No one asked me because I wasn't here for it. But they got a new quarterback in Jordan Love, so that's he's trying to learn the offense, learn all this, how to be a pro, while also trying to develop a rapport with a new quarterback. And there's a lot on his plate right now.
I liked what he said about Love. I don't know much about him,
I don't either, other than he's been sitting for 3 years waiting.
Yep. But that's got to be wild, because clearly this is a highly accomplished quarterback.
Yep.
And
first round pick, I think. So,
I mean, that's just got to be a kind of a different experience.
Yeah. And he said, people ask him, like, don't you wish you could play with Rodgers? I don't know. And I never will. He's already gone. He's a New York Jet. But he did say they have a rookie tight end they drafted out of Penn State, I think, or signed him, and he's probably looking at being like a practice squad guy. But because he's a rookie too, Tucker said, I'm spending a lot of time with him. We're kind of studying the offense together, learning stuff together. So he's in an interesting position as a rookie, in that he's in there with all these other rookies trying to just learn the ins and outs of being a professional. But it's also pretty clear the Packers are going to use him. They're going to play him, and they have some expectation of him. So maybe not as much patience. He said, one of the quotes I think I used in the story, where someone told him, dude, don't worry about it. I didn't figure out the offense till week 9.
Yeah.
And his quote was, well, F you, man. Like, I don't have that luxury. I can't wait till week 9. You know?
That's right. Well, that's going to be fun. It's going to give me something else to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't pay that much attention to the Packers. I have friends who are Packers fans and, all that kind of stuff. But it's always kind of fun to watch a, North Division team. But now I get something to pay attention to.
Well, and we've talked about it on here, but it's really crazy, and it's only going to continue to be more of a thing because there's going to be more guys drafted next year. But how nowadays we, as South Dakotans or in Sioux Falls, can turn on an NFL game on Sunday, and there's a pretty good chance there's someone from South Dakota in that game.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And actually, we're going to have. It reminds me, we have a page now, a section.
Yeah.
South Dakotans related, people with South Dakota ties in the NFL, and we'll be updating. That'll have stories on whenever there's stories about these guys, they'll get updated on that page. So look for that in the fall. Speaking of the Vikings, are they gonna come in with lower expectations this year? Because they kind of.
It's weird because they went 13-4.
Yeah, they had a great
really
season,
good,
but everybody knows it wasn't a real number.
All through the season, nobody believed in them, and then they, laid a stinker in the playoffs, and it felt like that 13 wins. A, they had a slightly easier schedule, and B, they just got a lot of breaks.
Yeah,
there were so many games that could have gone the other way that they won. Usually, the football gods, however you want to put it, that pendulum tends to swing back in the other direction when you've had, too much luck, so to speak, and also their schedule's tougher. A lot of times a new coach comes in and other teams don't know what that guy's about necessarily. You get a little beginner's luck, whatever you want to call it. I'm not high on the Vikings this year. I think their good fortune from last year is going to catch up to them. It's hard to tell what they're doing with their roster, just as far as, well, are we rebuilding or are we trying to compete? As long as Kirk Cousins is there making $28 million a year, you kind of almost have to go for it, try to win. But I just don't know if they have the resources to put together a roster that can do that. But it's also the NFL. And the minute you say that, that's when some team comes out of nowhere and wins 12, 13 games and does have what it takes to go to the playoffs. So I'm going to go in with really low expectations.
There you go.
Which is exactly what I did last year, too.
Yeah.
And I keep telling everyone, like, that was fun. Yeah, it sucked that they lost the playoff game, but I got to watch them win 13 times in one season, you know?
What would you rather have, right?
Yeah.
So are we supposed to believe that Detroit's going to be good?
I think so. I mean, they were good by the end of the year. They had a lot of bad luck early in the season. But they're also the Lions.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe that.
The Lions find a way to Lions all the time,
and we're just fine with that.
You know, the Packers might be the sleeper. I guess you could call the Lions a sleeper too, but it almost seems like they're becoming one of those teams that everyone likes them. You know, they're almost not a sleeper anymore because so many people are kind of to pick them. And Tucker alluded to this a little bit, and I saw some of it in some of the stuff I read before I called him. Just, I think there's a sense in Green Bay that everyone thinks we're just going to go in the toilet because Aaron Rodgers is gone. Yeah. And, you know, Jordan Love isn't going to be as good as Aaron Rodgers, but he's not a rookie. He's been waiting his turn. Yeah. Should know the book. Yeah. So if they can get a few breaks, and again, it's not a good division. The Bears stink. The Vikings are average. The Lions are the Lions. It'll be interesting. Yeah. And that's, when's the first NFL game? It's usually after Labor League. Well, it's like September 7th or 8th.
Preseason games will start.
The Hall of Fame game is usually like the first week of August or something.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Here we go, baby.
Yep.
Next week, you got a few stories coming up. Just interesting little things that I think people will like. Because, frankly, we're not going to be around that much. But we've got some good stuff for you to read next week. Story. I won't want to give too much away, but I like that story about the schedules. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about that.
I always am like trying to, and I think a lot of fans are probably in the same boat, which is why I decided to put it in print or digital print, as it were. We all know the Jacks played in Nebraska somewhere down the line. They play at Iowa State. They play USD's playing whoever. But I was kind of like, well, you know, let me go back and actually go through and look at all these. And I'd forgotten about a couple of them. There's a couple on there that I don't know have been necessarily publicly announced. And you know, it's so funny just because, not to get too deep or dark, but the world is so as it is. Yeah. You see a schedule for 2030 and you're like, is college football even going to exist in 2030? You know, is America going to be a sovereign nation in 2030? Like, I don't know. You know, that's a long, long ways away.
I'm not going to get a plane ticket.
Right. I'm reserving my getting excitement about, you know, I'll be 50 years old then.
Yeah.
But yes, SDSU's scheduled to play Nebraska in 2030. And they have some other FBS games. They have some other FCS games that I wasn't necessarily aware of. And part of it is because those non-conference games are kind of treated like currency a little bit. You can trade them. Yeah. You know, a few years ago, the Jacks were supposed to play the Gophers, and it was right when PJ Fleck had taken over Minnesota, and he was, I don't want to play an FCS team. Yeah. So somehow they worked it so the Gophers the Jacks ended up going to TCU. And the Gophers got someone else. Well, that was way cooler to go to TCU than go to see him play the Gophers for the 5th time. Yeah. So I got to go down to Amon Stadium in Fort Worth and see him play TCU. That was a great game. Those games are fun. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes they're blowouts. But most of the time they're not. Yeah. I mean, a couple of years ago, the Jacks went to Colorado State. And granted, that's not a power conference school, but beat the hell out of them. Yeah. You know, that was fun to watch. And USD's won a couple of those games. They've played tough, a couple of them. They opened this year with Missouri in the SEC. I mean, USD against an SEC team doesn't sound encouraging. But Missouri isn't anything special. They were 6-7 last year. And, you know, what a great way for the Coyotes to, a little bit of a litmus test. Okay, how much better are we or how far away are we? But also it works in the underdog's favor so much in those games because it's kind of got that, it's their Super Bowl a little bit, whatever. And the other team unless it's happened to them where they have lost one of those
Yeah.
games, they really don't. I know the coach spends the whole week saying, you can't
Don't-
overlook these
don't-
guys. You have
Yeah.
to be ready. But I just feel like unless they've had that happen to them where they've played one of those FCS teams and lost or almost lost, they just can't quite muster the right level of energy or whatever, and it ends up being a much closer game than it should.
Yeah. Well, and then one of them loses, right?
Right.
USD, and SDSU has beaten Minnesota now too, right?
No, they have not.
No,
They've
North
been
Dakota
close.
State did.
Yep. USD, like their first year, I don't
Yeah.
think they were eligible yet. I think it was
No.
their first or second year of their transition. They beat the Gophers when Tim Brewster was coaching them. Meyercourt was still coaching the Coyotes.
I was losing my mind.
It was a big deal. It was a much bigger deal then than it would be today.
Yep.
I mean, they were practically still a Division II team.
Yep.
And the Gophers turned out they stunk. Tim Brewster was a bad coach.
Right.
But that team had some expectations. It wasn't a team that was like, oh, we're going to go 3-8 this year. I remember at the time, this was a good 12, 13 years ago now. I call it the biggest win in the history by a South Dakota team ever. When you think about it, we were new to Division I.
Yep.
No one had been in the NCAA tournament yet.
Right.
What was bigger? What had ever happened in South Dakota that was bigger than going into Minneapolis and beating the Minnesota Gophers?
Yeah. And I remember because I don't think it was even on TV.
It might not have been.
I was listening to it
why
on
would
the
it be?
radio.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't remember what the name of the guy. They've been the Coyote announcer forever. I was just completely lost his mind. I mean, to the point where he was not making any sense anymore.
Well, I
But-
still remember the highlights of Meyercourt running down the sidelines or running onto the field after it was over. That's one of those images,
Yeah.
like Jim Valfano running around.
Yeah,
It was-
that's right.
whenever I think of Minnesota USD, there's the individual plays you remember, but I just remember Ed running around with this. Holy shit! I can't believe he just did
Yeah,
that.
that's right. That was crazy. Now, what's weird about this year is that SDSU doesn't have a FBS.
Nope, they don't
team.
have one, and that's it. They're lucky they have as many in the tank as they do.
Yeah.
because they're going to be harder to come by.
People won't want to play them.
North
anymore.
Dakota State went like 3, 4, 5 years, I think, without having one. Then last year they played Arizona and lost. They shouldn't have. They should have won that game. But anyway, lost at Arizona last week. I think it's this year they go to, or next year they go to Colorado, which Deion Sanders is coaching there. now.
Oh,
So
man.
that's that whole thing. They're starting to maybe, but they had to move up a little. I think they were supposed to play Oregon the year of the pandemic. That was a big one.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's been rescheduled or what the deal is with that, but it used to be you kind of looked around regionally, like, okay, Minnesota,
Yeah.
Iowa State, Kansas, whatever. Well, those are going to be harder. I mean, the Jacks almost beat Iowa last year. They've almost beat Minnesota a couple times. Now they're national champions. They beat the crap out of Colorado State, like I said, a couple years ago.
And they, it really has. They have the regional games are the ones that they're still going to get or have on their schedule going
Mhm.
down the line.
They've got Iowa State.
Yeah,
I think they have Iowa again. They have Northwestern, which will be fun.
that's pretty cool.
The one in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They have Oklahoma State next year. That'll be fun. I've driven through Stillwater on the way to Texas before. I'll probably drive. It'll be a long drive, but I like those long drives down there. And
It's not bad.
to see them play the Cowboys, Oklahoma State. I mean, it's just fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun to go watch a football game at Minnesota,
Yeah.
Iowa State, but it's fun to see new stadiums too.
Right.
Whether that means us in the media or the players, the coaches. They're like, hey, I've never been to this stadium before.
Yeah. And different colleges do different things and traditions, and that's part of the fun.
The
of
Yotes
it.
have Wisconsin on their schedule again,
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe. They've already been there once.
Yep.
They played there when Russell Wilson was the quarterback
Oh,
of Wisconsin.
wow.
And it's funny. I remember Mick Gary covered that game for the Argus, and Russell Wilson, you may remember, is only like 5'10",
Yeah.
5'11".
Yeah.
A lot of people were saying he can't play in the NFL. He's too small. I remember Mick Gary saying, like, I don't care if that guy's 4'2". It's like, that's the best football player I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
So Mick was right. Someone hire Mick to be a quarterback scout because he was all over Russell Wilson on that one.
It's a really cool stadium. That's one of those. It's it's fully enclosed. Obviously, most of the big ones are, but it just seems like it's a wall of
Yeah, it's like
bleachers.
90,000, I think.
and
Yeah.
and it seems very steep.
Mhm.
I'm sad that I've run around it 4 times in 2 different Ironmans because you got to run through it,
Uh-huh.
and it's really hard because when you're that tired and it's so cushy. Like,
Ugh.
but it was very weird because it's so quiet during that.
Right.
Nobody's like hooping and hollering,
Yeah.
and there were crows flying around. It was a little spooky, frankly. But just to be in an empty stadium like that,
Mhm.
and when they're so big, is really cool.
I drove through Michigan once,
Oh yeah.
and I stopped by the Big House, the University of Michigan Stadium, which I think is the biggest one.
Yeah.
It holds like 111,000, something like
Yeah.
that. And it was during the summer, so not for a game or anything. But we were in Ann Arbor, like, hey, and I remember walking up there, and they were doing some construction on it, and there was this guy there. I was like, "Can we just go in and look around?" He goes, "No, it's a construction site. You need a hard hat." I was like, "Come on, man, just let us look around." He's like, "All right, just make it quick. Run in there and pop in." And it walked in and looked, and and that one it almost looks like a Roman Coliseum sort of.
It's down in the ground, isn't it?
I don't even remember.
I think
it's so.
I remember driving.
I don't think
by
that one
it.
is. I don't think that one is, but I could be wrong.
It's like
I would in and out so fast because I
Yeah.
didn't want to get in trouble. I just remember the big M.
yeah. I remember
over
the
there,
outside. I didn't get to go in.
Yeah, I've seen Michigan State. I've stood outside. Virginia Tech when I was just there for the
Oh, yeah.
NCAA tournament. I've been to a ton of stadiums when there wasn't a game.
Yeah,
because you're
me
there
too.
during basketball season or summer vacation or whatever, and you drive by. But,
I was in one way back in the day. We won some award at the Argus from this institution that was at the University of Florida.
oh, yeah.
And so they put you in the hotel that was in the student center that was next to the swamp.
Uh-huh.
And from my little balcony, I could look down into the stadium.
nice.
That was pretty cool. That is a big stadium.
College
too.
football stadiums at those higher. I mean, they're bigger than NFL stadiums.
Yeah.
They're bigger than major. Those are the biggest buildings we make.
What is
Yeah.
the Rose Bowl seats like 100,000?
Yeah, I used to know, like Texas and Texas A&M. I think are over 100. I know Michigan's over 100. Tennessee's over 100.
Wow.
I think maybe LSU. I mean, and what they do is it becomes this competition.
Yeah.
So like Michigan will add another 850 seats, and then Tennessee's like, all right, we got to find a way to jam another 1,100 seats in there because they're trying to be the biggest one.
Oh man, it's crazy. Yeah, that's about what we got, isn't it?
I did something else to put in the can before I left, but I don't even remember what it was.
Oh no, it was the games to watch. 12.
Oh, right.
That's a really good one too.
Right.
And there's some stuff in there you wouldn't normally think about. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
mean, I
pretty
could have
cool.
just made it 12 SDSU games.
Yeah, right. But
But
you know, the season starts with the Dakota State, Dakota Wesleyan
Mhm.
game. That's a fun game.
That's always fun.
yeah. So
The first time I covered it, it was like 38-37, right down to the wire. I mean, both quarterbacks were. I was like, for NAIA football, if you ever hear someone poo-poo NAIA football,
yeah.
that was a hell of a game. And I've gone back as many years as I could since then. It's always fun.
Cool. Well, we will be back in a couple of weeks, probably. We don't know. We never know. But we'll be here.
Take some time off, people.
Yeah, get out there, have some fun, relax. It's our 240. I don't know how many years have we been a country.
248.
248, something like that. It's right up there.
We're
It's a good
obviously math
place.
majors.
Be happy.
Happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday, America. Be nice to your neighbors. Be a good citizen. We'll see you next time.
Don't blow your fingers off.